The Los Angeles fire started in the early morning hours of January 10th, 2025. At first, it was just a whisper of smoke curling up into the chilly Los Angeles sky, but within hours, it had transformed into an unstoppable inferno, roaring through the hills of the city with terrifying speed. What began as a faint smudge of gray quickly bloomed into an all-consuming orange and red beast, devouring everything in its path. Los Angeles had seen its share of fires before. Every year, as the dry season lingered longer and temperatures climbed higher, the city braced itself for the inevitable. But this fire felt different. This wasn't just another blaze in the hills. This was a monster, unpredictable and relentless. It roared through the canyons, fueled by bone-dry vegetation, ferocious winds, and an unrelenting heat wave that had turned Southern California into a tinderbox. The origin of the fire wasn't immediately clear. Some speculated it could have been a downed power line, a careless camper, or even a spark from a vehicle. Others whispered of arson. But in the chaos, the why mattered little to the thousands of residents watching the smoke creep closer to their homes. What mattered was survival. As the sun rose on January 10th, the sky over Los Angeles turned a sickly shade of orange. The thick plume of smoke rising from the hills was visible from miles away, a grim reminder of how quickly the fire was spreading. The Santa Ana winds, infamous for their dry, powerful gusts, had picked up overnight, carrying embers far beyond the fire's immediate reach. In Beverly Hills, where the fire's edge now threatened the sprawling mansions of celebrities and business moguls, the atmosphere was chaotic. People rushed to pack valuables, photos, documents, jewelry into their cars. Some wore expressions of grim determination. Others openly wept as they made hurried decisions about what to take and what to leave behind. The air was filled with the wail of fire truck sirens and the low hum of helicopters overhead, dumping water and fire retardant onto the flames. At one such mansion, actress Caroline Hayes stood on her balcony, staring out at the glowing horizon. Her once pristine view of rolling green hills was now marred by thick black smoke and the flickering orange of flames climbing higher with each passing moment. "Caroline, we have to go," her assistant Maya called from the doorway, her voice tinged with panic. "The evacuation orders just came in. We don't have time to wait." Caroline turned, her hands shaking. "I can't just leave everything behind, Maya. This is my home." "It's not safe here," Maya urged, grabbing Caroline's arm gently but firmly. "We have to leave now. You can replace things, but you can't replace your life." As if to punctuate her point, the sound of something exploding echoed from the distance. It was likely a propane tank from another property, a grim reminder of how destructive the fire could be. Caroline swallowed hard and nodded, allowing Maya to pull her inside. On the front lines of the fire, firefighters battled exhaustion and overwhelming heat as they worked tirelessly to protect homes, wildlife, and lives. Captain Miguel Alvarez, a seasoned firefighter with the Los Angeles Fire Department, had seen plenty of wildfires in his 20-year career. But this one was testing even his limits. "Alvarez, we've got a new flare-up on the East Ridge," came the voice of his teammate, Sarah, crackling through the radio. "It's moving fast." "Copy that," Alvarez replied, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. He wiped the sweat from his brow and adjusted his helmet. The smoke was so thick he could barely see 10 feet in front of him. "Team Bravo, redirect to the East Ridge. We need to cut it off before it reaches the residential area." They were working in near impossible conditions. The heat was blistering, the air choking with smoke and ash. Embers flew like fireflies in the wind, sparking new blazes faster than they could contain them. Helicopters roared overhead, dumping water on the flames, but it was like trying to douse a volcano with a garden hose. Still, Alvarez and his team pressed on. They had no choice. In downtown Los Angeles, the fire was all anyone could talk about. On every news channel, the story dominated headlines. Aerial footage showed the hills ablaze, a jagged line of fire creeping closer and closer to the city's most iconic neighborhoods. The Hollywood sign was visible in some shots, a stark silhouette against the smoky sky. At the Los Angeles Convention Center, which had been converted into an evacuation shelter, families huddled together, clutching blankets and staring at the TV screens broadcasting updates. Volunteers handed out water bottles and masks, but there was little they could do to ease the tension in the air. Maria Hernandez sat in a corner of the shelter with her 2 young children, a boy and a girl. Her husband, a firefighter, was out battling the blaze, and she hadn't heard from him in hours. Her phone was dead, and the power at home had gone out before they evacuated. She tried to stay calm for her kids, but the uncertainty was eating away at her. "Mommy, is Daddy going to be okay?" her son asked, his big brown eyes filled with worry. Maria forced a smile. "Your dad is a hero, mijo. He's out there helping people, and he's going to be just fine." But deep down, she was terrified. While the fire wreaked havoc on human lives, it was also devastating the natural environment. The hillsides, once lush with vegetation, were now blackened wastelands. Wildlife fled in all directions, some unable to escape the fast-moving flames. Deer, rabbits, and coyotes were seen running down streets, desperate to find refuge. Birds circled overhead, their homes turned to ash. At the Los Angeles Zoo, staff worked frantically to evacuate animals. Elephants, giraffes, and other large mammals were loaded into trucks and transported to safer locations. But for some animals, like the smaller and more delicate species, evacuation was nearly impossible. Zookeepers stayed behind to do what they could, even as the smoke thickened and the fire crept closer. As devastating as the fire was, it also brought out the best in people. Local businesses donated food and supplies to evacuees. Hotels offered free rooms to those displaced by the fire. Volunteers organized fundraisers, clothing drives, and meal distributions. Social media was flooded with posts offering help, from spare bedrooms to rides out of the evacuation zones. In a small neighborhood church, Pastor Benjamin Clark opened the doors to anyone in need. His congregation had turned the sanctuary into a makeshift shelter, complete with cots, blankets, and hot meals. "We're all in this together," he told a group of evacuees gathered in the pews. "This fire may be strong, but our community is stronger." By January 15th, the fire was still burning, though firefighters had managed to contain parts of it. Entire neighborhoods lay in ruins, reduced to smoldering rubble. The damage was staggering. Hundreds of homes destroyed, millions of dollars in property lost, and countless lives upended. For those who had lost everything, the road to recovery would be long and difficult. Insurance claims would take months to process. Rebuilding homes would take even longer. And for some, the scars left by the fire would never fully heal. But Los Angeles had faced disasters before, and it would rise again. The resilience of its people shone through in the darkest of times. Strangers helped strangers, neighbors supported one another, and the city came together in a way that reminded everyone of the strength of community. As firefighters continued to battle the flames and families began the process of rebuilding, one thing was clear. While the fire had taken much, it had not taken the spirit of Los Angeles. And in the face of such devastation, that spirit was more important than ever.